welcome to Scott Fox After 9. Today, I've got a whole wide variety of different topics that I'm going to cover. You're going to hear a little bit of Ontario Premier Doug Ford in this episode. You're also going to hear a little bit of talk about immigration as well. But before I get to that, I want to talk about what's going on in Mexico. It's very, very confusing to me because Sunday, after the hockey game ended, I started seeing all of this smoke rising over Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And as I dug further into it, it turns out the cartels were setting things on fire and terrorizing people in certain communities because the Mexican military took out one of the major cartel leaders. And they did that with a little bit of assistance from U.S. military intelligence. So the cartels went nuts, and Canadians, it seemed like a very dangerous situation. They were told, stay in your hotel, don't leave your room, shelter in place, contact the embassy, contact Foreign Affairs, and register as a Canadian in Mexico. Turns out there's like almost 20,000 Canadians in Mexico right now. And I thought, this is bad. We've got to get those Canadians out of there because this seems like a very volatile situation that people were certainly not expecting. But now, it's Tuesday as I record here, Tuesday morning. WestJet, Air Canada, Porter, Transat, they're all resuming flights to Mexico as if nothing happened. Kind of weird if you ask me. So let's take a bit of a deeper dive into that. I want to take you to yesterday in Ottawa. This is our Foreign Affairs Minister, Anita Anand.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining me. I am monitoring the serious and rapidly evolving security situation in various regions of Mexico, in particular the Jalisco State, including Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta, Guerrero State, including Acapulco, Michoacan State, Sinaloa, including Mazatlan, Quintana Roo, including Cancun, Baja California, including Tijuana and Tecate, Nayarit. I am in contact with my Mexican counterpart, who expects the situation to normalize in the coming days. Our ambassador and consular staff are working with their counterparts to ensure that Canadians remain safe. Last evening, we updated our travel advisory to first expand the list of affected areas, to alert that volatility may continue to spread, and 3, align travel advisories with that of our peers. Local authorities have, in some cases, issued a shelter-in-place order, and the situation remains fluid. All Canadians in affected regions should heed the direction of local authorities and travel only when it is safe to do so. As of 7 o'clock this morning, 26,305 Canadians in Mexico have registered with Global Affairs Canada. That is an increase of nearly 8,000 from the same time yesterday. Registration is voluntary. We know that the actual number of Canadians in Mexico is likely much higher. In the last 24 hours, Canada's Emergency Watch and Response Centre has received 440 calls from Canadians who are seeking information about flights and travel advisories. Global Affairs Canada is adding additional surge personnel to handle the increased call volume. A word of encouragement. All Canadians traveling or living abroad are strongly encouraged to register with Global Affairs in order to receive timely updates and information about the ongoing situation and travel advice.
Just going to interrupt the minister here for a second. I mean, all of this sounds very, very concerning. I mean, the minister seems quite concerned herself, and I apologize. She had better numbers than I did. Over 26,000 Canadians in Mexico have registered. So is it safe or is it not safe? Because that's what I'm trying to understand. Part of me wants to say, you know what, it doesn't seem safe. We shouldn't go to Mexico. But then I know how much money talks. And I'm wondering, did the Mexican government try and create an illusion that things down there are safe and under control to try and resume the flights down there because they don't want to miss out on any tourism dollars. And while I certainly don't blame the Mexican government for wanting to bring tourists in, is this really the time, and is it really all that safe? Let me skip ahead in Minister Anand's news conference here and get to a few other highlights that I think you might want to hear.
Do you believe that President Sheinbaum has the situation under control?
I am concerned with the safety and security of Canadians first and foremost. In answer to your question, in my conversation with Foreign Minister de la Fuente last evening, he indicated that the situation should stabilize in the coming days and that this was a targeted operation which will not continue.
This seems to have been triggered by this, Minister. All this violence has been triggered by the security operation. Given the number of Canadians that were there, were you given any warning that this security operation was going to take place?
I was not provided with any indication that this particular operation would be taking place. And on my understanding, I believe that the Government of Canada was not provided with indication that it was going to occur.
Okay, so Minister Anand saying, number one, the Canadian government wasn't consulted. This was an operation between the Mexican government and the U.S. government, along with their respective militaries. Canada was not even in the conversation. We didn't even get a heads up. So that's not good. But on top of that, when asked if she thinks that this is you know what, let me play it just one more time.
Sheinbaum has the situation under control.
I am concerned with the safety and security of Canadians first and foremost.
Minister Anand wouldn't even say that she thinks the president of Mexico has got this situation under control. So how is it that less than 24 hours after she gave this news conference, all of the Canadian airlines are flying full planes down to Mexico for people to go on a vacation? I just want to know if it's safe. If people can go down there and enjoy their time on the beach and having a drink and doing all the great things in Mexico, fine. But is it safe? Or are we sending people into a volatile situation just because we don't want to upset the Mexican government, who's motivated mainly by tourism dollars?
We have seen Canadians register in the thousands just in the last 24 hours. I would like to give you the telephone number for Canadians to register, 613-996-8885, sos@international.gc.ca. Canadians should also monitor airlines' communications for the status of their flights. We are in contact with the airlines and with Mexican authorities to ensure that service is safely restored as soon as possible.
As soon as possible was very quick. 24 hours and all the airlines are flying back down there again. You know what? Let's find out what the Americans are talking about here. Let's find out what guidance they're giving their people. I want to play for you a little bit of the U.S. Press Secretary, Carolyn Leavitt. Actually, this was earlier this morning. She was doing one of the breakfast television type interviews.
Secretary Rubio and the State Department are absolutely on it. We hear from Americans directly who are in Mexico because the State Department immediately set up 24/7 phone lines, and they're taking hundreds of calls a day, providing Americans on the ground with travel support and advice. The State Department also has issued new travel advisories, and they'll continue to update those as the situation progresses. So we encourage all Americans in Mexico to, of course, adhere to the guidance provided by the State Department. Right now, we are unaware of any reports of any Americans being hurt, kidnapped, or killed, and the Mexican drug cartels know not to lay a finger on a single American, or they will pay severe consequences under this president. And they already are. This operation, which was carried out successfully by the Mexican authorities, was, of course, supported by the United States, would not have happened without the leadership of President Trump. He has made it a day one priority to target and go after these vicious drug cartels that have shipped deadly poison to our country for far too long. He signed an executive order to rightfully designate them as foreign terrorist organizations. We've seen the president take unilateral lethal action against drug boats sailing through the Caribbean. And now, of course, we are coordinating and cooperating and pushing the Mexican government to do more to end the scourge of deadly drugs coming through our United States southern border, which, of course, is now secure thanks to President Trump as well.
Okay, I mean, obviously it's partisan and there's some important talking points in there, but, the first half of that was interesting. The cartels know if you lay a finger on an American, there will be severe consequences from this president. I don't know if I'd be messing around if I was a cartel leader, especially when they just went in and took out one of the big kingpins. That's crazy to me. Hey, listen, if you're one of my amazing listeners and you're in Mexico right now, please be careful and use your best judgment. If it doesn't feel safe, get out of the situation you're in. If you want to come back to Canada, phone that 613 number. If you just rewind a little bit, you can hear that again from the Foreign Affairs Minister. But please, God, take care of yourselves down there. I don't know. Maybe social media is making it look worse than it is, but it looks pretty bad down there. You know what I mean? I'm a little worried about where this is going, and the last thing I want is to fly even more Canadians into harm's way. I don't know if it's the airlines making these decisions, travel agents, foreign affairs. I have no idea anymore. But again, it doesn't seem like the safest situation right now in Mexico. Having said that, though, it's a beautiful country. I understand why people want to go, and I don't fault you for it. Just don't put yourself in a dangerous situation, because the last thing we want to have to do is start flying repatriation flights to try and get you back out of Mexico. Because as soon as that happens, you know what the argument's going to be. Why would you go down there in the first place? You knew it was not safe. Why would you go? Why? Because Transat said it was okay? Yeah, I can see it coming, everybody, and it's not going to be great, unfortunately. I did play the Foreign Affairs Minister, Anita Anand. I'm going to play just a couple other things for you from Ottawa yesterday before I get to a news conference that Ontario Premier Doug Ford did. This from the House of Commons yesterday. It is Andrew Lawton, great member of parliament from southwestern Ontario. He brought up an interesting case that I know a lot of folks are talking about. A BC school board trustee was fined $750,000 over gender ideology. Listen to Andrew yesterday phrase a question in the House.
A British Columbia school board trustee was fined $750,000 for the egregious crime of saying there are two genders. These are the same kangaroo courts that the Liberals' Online Harms Act empowers. It's the same regulation of emotion that Liberal Bill C9 supercharges. The Liberals claim they will uphold freedom of expression, but still have not said whether they will acknowledge and accept the Federal Court of Appeal ruling that they violated the constitutional rights of Canadians by invoking the Emergencies Act. Will they commit now to giving up on their censorship agenda and letting Canadians live their lives and speak their minds?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
A couple points, Mr. Speaker. There is no censorship agenda. We will keep our kids safe, including safe from child pornographers, and the convoy was an illegal occupation of the downtown of our capital that people wanted gone, and he supported with his leader. Shame on them, bringing donuts to people occupying our nation's capital.
I don't think that's the flex he thinks it is. I mean, the Court of Appeal said all of our constitutional rights were violated, and so far nobody has been held accountable for that. But I really don't think that that's the point of the clip. Is there a censorship agenda? I think by now, most people have done at least a little bit of digging into things like Bill C-11, Bill C-9. For the federal government to stand up and say there's no censorship agenda, I mean, that's just crazy. Of course there's a censorship agenda. They want to control free speech. Whether or not they should or shouldn't, that's a completely other debate, but they can't deny that they're doing it. I'm going to move on to another one from the House of Commons yesterday. This is one for our health minister, and it's a topic that is going to be talked about a lot in the coming days and weeks. As it turns out, when someone comes to Canada and claims asylum, they're getting better health benefits than regular Canadians are. Imagine that. You know, we Canadians, we all understand that for the most part, our health care is quote unquote free. You go to the doctor, nobody gives you a bill. You need to get a surgery done, nobody gives you a bill. But there are things that we do have to pay for, from the ambulance ride to the hospital to eye exams and all sorts of other things. There's a lot of fees that people have to pay. And as it turns out, the asylum seekers, they get like ultra health benefits, even though most of them do not have a bona fide claim to asylum. They're just gaming the system and taking advantage of Canadian generosity. Yesterday, the health minister was asked about that.
Mr. Speaker, it's really unfortunate that we have this kind of conversation where we are talking of the health of Canadian and asylum seekers. The reality is those people are in the country and we have agreement. And our system, the health system is a compassionate system. So what we are saying is those people, they need to have access to health. And we are working closely with provinces and territories also to get more access to Canadian people.
Wow. It's a very simple question. Should somebody who comes to Canada and does not have a bona fide claim to asylum be getting better health benefits than Canadians who live here and have paid taxes here all their life? Is that fair? I think the vast majority of Canadians would say absolutely not. If we're going to have government health benefits, it should cover everything. Or those who come here and are ripping us off shouldn't be able to get better health benefits than the Canadians who have lived here all their lives and paid taxes all their lives. That should be a very simple, common sense thing. This is an issue that's going to come up today in Ottawa. The Conservatives have an opposition day, meaning they can introduce legislation, and it's not going to pass. The federal Liberals are never going to pass a bill that was put forward by the Conservatives. They just won't do it. It's a fight thing. It's a political thing. It's a game. Even if it's a great idea, they will not do it if it's proposed by the opposition. Well, Dan Mazier is a member of Parliament. Dan is the member for, let me see here, Mountain. Yesterday, he put out a video that tried to explain a little bit about this controversy in advance of the Conservative motion that is going to go in front of the House today. Listen to maybe a minute and a half of Dan explaining what the issue is.
The Parliamentary Budget Officer just released a damning report that revealed the healthcare program used by bogus asylum claimants will cost Canadian taxpayers over $1.5 billion a year. Yes, $1.5 billion. Thanks to a Conservative-led investigation at the Health Committee, we now know the true cost of this disastrous program. In 2016, the Liberals expanded healthcare coverage for asylum seekers to include supplemental health benefits. According to the government, these benefits include, and I quote, vision care, counseling, assisted devices, home visits, nursing homes, transportation, taxes, and other supplemental services such as physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and interpretation services.
The information we received says that for the last fiscal year, so 24-25, the supplemental benefits represented a bit over 50% of the total health expenditure of the program. And that category was growing as a contributor. So in our projection, that proportion would grow.
That last voice you heard was Caroline Nickel. She is from the Parliamentary Budget Office. Hey, why are asylum seekers, and again, a lot of them do not have a bona fide claim. A lot of them are here just hoping that they are allowed to stay. They're using this as a backdoor way into the country. When you think about what Canadians pay for versus what they're getting for free as people who don't pay taxes, they're getting vision care, counseling, assistive devices, home visits, nursing homes, transportation. They're getting taxes paid. They're getting physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, interpretation services, and more. These are all things that Canadian taxpayers have to pay for. And we're just giving it to anybody who shows up at the airport, whether it's a legitimate claim or not, and says, I want to declare asylum. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's right? Do you think that we should offer the Cadillac of healthcare services to people who don't have a bona fide claim to be here? And again, how are these asylum claimants being allowed to stay here? To me, this is a very simple thing. We spend a lot of money on dumb things in this country. I think most people agree with that, right? Why don't we spend our money in a common sense way hire a whole bunch of immigration judges and put them at the airport. And when somebody shows up and says, I want to claim asylum, send them right down the hall to the judge. And if the judge thinks, well, there could be some merit here to this claim, you're allowed to stay while we investigate. Or the judge says you have no claim for asylum based on Canadian law. Turn around and get right back on the plane. You are not coming into Canada. Once they're in, they're in. So don't let them in. Just have a bunch of judges at the airport adjudicating it right then and there. It's obvious if somebody might have a bona fide claim versus they have no real claim. And the big one, the workaround right now, the hack, if you will, is when an immigrant gets accused of a serious crime, then they turn around and try and declare asylum. And that basically resets the process for them. They're allowed to stay for up to years in certain cases or until we deport them. But we're not actively deporting people, nearest I can tell. Hey, listen, I just want to make sure this is fair for the people that are paying taxes. If you don't mind, half of our check goes to taxes. And this is what it's paying for? People that don't have a bona fide asylum claim, and they're getting better health care services than Canadians are. I think that's messed up, personally. Feel however you want to. That's just my opinion, but I don't think that's right. And today, the Conservatives in the House of Commons are introducing a motion to try and put an end to that. And by the way, $1.5 billion is what we're spending on this. Did the government have any plans to tell us that? Or were they just hoping that nobody would notice? It's very shady, if you know what I mean. It's very, very frustrating. Stuff like that drives me nuts, and it sows distrust in the government. I'm going to move on. Yesterday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford decided to do a news conference. Doug right now is facing just so many different scandals. It's really hard to keep track. There are numerous investigations going on. He has cut the OSAP funding. There are massive cost overruns and delays with his transit projects. And he doesn't really seem to want to focus on any of that. You know, you could make the case that there is a crisis in healthcare. There is a crisis in education. And all he wants to talk about is Donald Trump, even though Mark Carney is on the file. Mark Carney's job is to work something out with the Americans. But Doug keeps inserting himself into this. Listen to Premier Ford speaking yesterday.
Now, when the midterms come up, you know, there's going to be, I think, 33 seats in the Congress that are up for grabs. 20 of them are going to be Republican, a lot in Michigan. And as for the Supreme Court ruling, fortunate that we aren't affected as of right now. But things change on a daily basis, as everyone knows. President Trump could wake up and, you know, a couple options. We move forward and we get a deal. Or he might blow up the Kuzma deal, but we have to have plans for everything. And, you know, I always say, and I've said this to the federal government, hope is not a strategy. A strategy is getting out there, making sure that we focus on our key areas of our economy, no matter right now if it's building out nuclear, cutting regulatory conditions that could take up to, 18 years. We can't wait 18 years. We have to start looking at the red tape and regulations to cut those. We have to continue investing in the companies by lowering taxes, making ourselves more competitive around the world, and especially with our friends south of the border. So we're all hands on deck. We're focusing on obviously nuclear, manufacturing.
All right, he's just going to go and start repeating himself again. Listen, Doug Ford here is into an area that's really not his area of expertise or focus. He's clearly been watching a ton of CNN lately to understand the electoral landscape in America, and he just seems obsessed with this American thing. I think by and large, Canadians, or Ontarians specifically, would like their premier to focus on the things the premier is supposed to focus on, not the least of which are health, education, and transit. And the premier is not talking about those things because, frankly, there's nothing for him to brag about. Now, he did point out, and he is quite right, Donald Trump, if he wants to, could pull out of CUSMA, the Canada-USA-Mexico agreement. That comes up for review, like basically now. Trump could announce that he's pulling out of it basically any time. We have to renegotiate that. And I'm wondering, just think about this. We all understand how Donald Trump works, I think. Most people understand that he is very focused on Donald Trump. He loves himself. He likes wins. He likes people who praise him. When we take a negative approach to Donald Trump, when we try and shame him or paint him into a corner, when we try and talk about maybe costing him an election, A, that's us interfering in their election. And B, I don't think that's going to work out very well. You know, I think this is a classic case of you can attract a much better deal if you're humble and just deal with him the way he likes to be dealt with. And unfortunately, he is the guy who makes the decision. Erratic or not, he is the guy who's going to decide if the U.S. is going to remain in CUSMA or if there's going to be a series of bilateral agreements. Don't you think we should probably be a little bit gracious in this, a little bit humble in this, even if we completely disagree that we need to be? That's how he likes to be dealt with, and he's the one calling the shots, and we need to get a deal, don't we? Here's a little bit more of Premier Doug Ford continuing to poke the bear and try and agitate Donald Trump.
You know, the Supreme Court, it hasn't changed, thankfully. Anything here in Ontario or in Canada, we're still keeping an eye on Section 232, but make no mistake about it, President Trump still has a lot of tools, but I think it's the walls are closing in on President Trump. No matter if you saw him lose the vote and 6 Republicans cross the floor with Congress, then you saw the Supreme Court decision. We'll see how the Senate decision comes up, but I'm going to be on the phone full steam. And later on, I think in a month or so, I'm going to do a U.S. trip with the other governors. Governors are meeting, I believe, in Salt Lake City. Another group of governors, southeastern governors, along with other premiers, will be attending Salt Lake City, but I think that's closer to June. And then there's another meeting with the governors and premiers in South Carolina that will be down representing Ontario, along with other premiers and governors, and then as well as down in Texas as well.
Okay, Premier Ford, he's going to aggressively insert himself into U.S. politics to try and cost Donald Trump the midterm elections, which are coming up in the fall. Tonight is the U.S. State of the Union address, and I have no doubt that President Trump is going to tout all of his victories in the first year. One thing that he has not been able to do, though, is reach an agreement with Canada. It seems like we're the ones trying to make sure that there's no deal with the Americans, if I'm being honest. I mean, Doug Ford, on some level, must understand that certain people like to be dealt with a certain way, including Doug Ford himself. We all saw how he handled that Crown Royal fiasco. The shakedown he put on Diageo, give us money or we'll screw you. Well, he's very similar to Donald Trump, so he should understand intimately how Trump wants to be dealt with. I really don't know that this is the smartest strategy, trying to interfere in those politics. But hey, that's Doug Ford not focusing on provincial issues. And frankly, there's a few of them that I think really need to be discussed. I mentioned healthcare, still waiting for families that have children on the autism spectrum to get proper funding and therapies for their kids. There is a crisis in education. There is a lot of things going on in this province that the premier doesn't want to talk about. But let's get to the OSAP topic. This is one that I particular care about a lot. And here's why. There's a lot of Ontario students who are about to enter college and university, and they thought they would get the same opportunity as the kids who went into college or university this year. But no. Doug Ford has pulled the rug out from under them. And he didn't just pull the rug out from under them by cutting the available grants from 85% to 25%. He also chastised them for the choices they've made in their careers or in their education leading up to a career. Let's play a little bit of the premier and then we'll discuss.
Premier, we've heard from a lot of students in recent days about OSAP, and they've taken aim at your charge that their family is making $250 grand. They said they wouldn't even qualify if that was the case. They say they're not making, taking basket weaving courses, but they are worried about affording their post-secondary schooling under these changes. Have you heard from them, and are you going to change your mind on this?
Yeah, no, I've heard from a lot of students messaging me and I appreciate their messages. Some are pretty nasty, but some are very professional, and this comes down to, we've invested a record amount in the country, in the province, never been invested to a tune of $7 billion. I'm going to repeat that number, $7 billion each and every single year moving forward. We're investing into our colleges and universities, but when you take a course, you have to look at in-demand jobs, something that we can drive our economy. And it's not a God-given right to take taxpayers' money. It's a God-given right to get your college degree and university, but you can't come back to the taxpayers and say, yes, I got a lot of baskets, by the way, message to me, but people thought I was joking. There's actually a basket weaving course at Carleton. And when I tell people that, and I talk to a lot of people, they said no.
Okay, let's just be clear here that Doug Ford absolutely has no understanding whatsoever of how post-secondary education works. It's very similar to a secondary school education in that you have elective courses that you can take and you have compulsory courses that you have to take. Your electives can be a lot of different things. If Carleton, a well-respected, highly distinguished institution, sees some value in offering a basket weaving course, I don't know what that would be, but I'm going to trust the judgment of the folks over at Carleton. Doug Ford is going on here about the billions and billions that he spent on education. But then he goes and says there's too many kids taking courses that are not going to lead to jobs. Hey, the premier's kind of right. When you're deciding what you want to take in post-secondary, you should always have an eye on what jobs that could lead to. But here's the problem. Doug Ford will chastise these students here that are getting ready to go into university and college, but he won't actually explain which courses are useless. Doug, here's my challenge to you and everyone at the provincial government. Number one, get the goddamn microphone at Queen's Park fixed. It's getting ridiculous now. The crackling, you have the gain too high. You've got to turn the gain down, take a little bit of bass out of the premier's voice, and turn the fader up a little bit higher. That'll solve your problem, and then the news conferences will sound much better than they do. I can't believe I've twice now had to flag this for you people, but whatever. Whoever's in charge of audio video at Queen's Park, get your act together. That's number one. Number two, Doug Ford has not laid out exactly which courses are useless. He's pumping billions and billions and billions of dollars, he says, into the universities and colleges. Well, why would he just blindly do that if he thinks the colleges and universities are offering courses that are useless? Doug Ford needs to explain for any parent or any student that's picking out their courses for next year which are the useless courses, which profs need to be fired, which departments need to be shut down, and stop funding them for it. If Doug Ford insists that these are useless programs, then why is he funding them? And when it comes to OSAP, again, it used to be up to 85% could be a grant. Now it's been dropped to 25%. And he did that with no notice. I made this point last week, and I think it's such an important one to make. The kids who are going into college and university this coming September had both their elementary and their secondary school education disrupted by Doug Ford's COVID policies. On top of that, they were too old at the time to ever take advantage of the $10 a day childcare. And of course, right now, the province and the federal government are subsidizing everyone's childcare greatly. These kids never got anything. They never got any favors from Doug Ford or the Ontario PC government. Not a thing. In fact, the government has done nothing but get in their way. Now Doug Ford is chastising them for the courses they take, and he slashed their funding by billions. The amount of debt that students are going to graduate with is simply staggering. And you know what's going to happen? Kids are either going to opt not to go to university. That's the first thing. Or, and this is a big problem because I deal with this in my other job, they're going to start going to school in the States. It's a very, very simple thing. Right now, there's a ton of colleges and universities in America that'll offer scholarships. If your kid is even halfway to decent at lacrosse, hockey, soccer, baseball, golf, you name it, they'll offer a scholarship to go to school down there. And when you do, you play on their NCAA team, you get a good experience. My son did it. Just so you know, he went through that process. He played lacrosse in America, and he got an American education. The reason that he opted to do that is because he wanted to play lacrosse. But for parents that have to make dollars and cents decisions, I point out to them, wearing my other hat all the time, you know, you can get that scholarship from the States, but even with the scholarship, it's still going to be a lot more cost effective for you to go to school in Ontario, to go to school in Canada, and you get a great education here. Now we're tilting things so much that it might actually be cheaper to go to school in the States. Maybe Doug is trying to make the university system collapse altogether. I don't know what his end goal is, but there's a lot of reason to think that if colleges and universities are celebrating the fact that the premier allowed them to raise tuition and gave them more funding, that's all well and good. But if there's no students that want to go there, that's going to create an even bigger problem. Talk about an idea that is not well thought through.
Expensive to take in school, and this is already deterring students from pursuing graduate.
Well, let's look at where we're at in the country, right? We're middle of the pack. We're more generous than BC. We're more generous than Alberta. We're more generous than Saskatchewan, because you have to look at across the country. We're middle of the pack right now. We're investing a tremendous amount into the colleges and universities. Again, $7 billion. It's not like we're cutting investments in colleges. We're doing the total opposite. We're investing more money to make sure we stabilize the sector. And I just encourage every single student, make sure you look at, core economic priorities of the country, core economic priorities of the province. You are taking tax dollars, and you have to be held accountable when you take tax dollars. It's not a freebie anymore. Money doesn't grow on trees. So we're
What an insulting and condescending thing to say. Doug Ford, money doesn't grow on trees. If you're taking taxpayer dollars, you need to be accountable. I mean, you could make the exact same argument about Doug Ford himself. His Vanity, Ontario subway line, supposed to be open in 2027 at a cost of $11 billion. The new cost is $27 billion, and they have no idea when it's going to open up, but it won't be this decade. Where's the accountability for that? Where's the accountability for endless scandals involving this government where they wasted taxpayer money? Doug Ford's not accountable to the taxpayers, not in any way. This is a guy who presides over a house that barely ever sits. They're on the longest winter break in Ontario history right now. It's bananas to chastise students, to claim that they're trying to steal taxpayer money and waste it. Let me tell you what the play is. Doug Ford is hoping that people are going to listen to him and get angry that students are wasting money. In reality, they're not. Doug says students should be picking out courses that are going to lead to jobs in areas where Ontario needs workers. Okay, fine. I mean, if he wants to go with that, fine. But this is the first time he even brought it up. This wasn't mentioned last year when it was 85% grants. He's only now lecturing students when it's 25% grants, and I think he's doing it because he's getting sick of the backlash. My advice to all of you listening right now, whether you have a kid or not, whether you have a kid that's close to university and college age or not, even if you've got a kid that's already gone through the system, we need to prioritize education. Absolutely have to do it. Anyone who wants an education, regardless of how much money they have, if academically they can meet the requirements, we have an obligation to help them out. And maybe it doesn't need to be 85%. But there's a compromise in there. It's certainly not 25%, because what we're doing is we're sending the message that if you come from money, you can absolutely get that university degree and you can have that white collar job. But if you don't have the money, you're going to trade school, and that's all there is to it. That is what Doug Ford has decided. And that's not to take anything away from the trades. Noble professions that pay well, and most of the time there's fairly good stability. But it isn't for everybody. Not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody's built for that. If you're smart enough and you want to go to university, particularly if you want to get a job in an area that will lead to further jobs down the line that is going to contribute to the economy, We're just throwing you to the wolves here. Sure, you'll get your degree. Maybe you will, maybe you won't get a job, but you certainly will get a bill. You will absolutely get a bill because OSAP is relentless in trying to collect their money. I'm going to skip the rest of Premier Ford. I think everybody gets the picture. He is incredibly misguided on this, and I hope that everybody takes a moment to contact their local member of provincial parliament, the PCs. All of them. You know, Doug Ford is just the face of this, but it's a government behind him. And I have to think that until they say otherwise, Carolyn Mulrooney agrees with Doug Ford. Stephen Lecce agrees with Doug Ford. They want cuts to OSAP. I have to think Sylvia Jones, Vic Fideli, Peter Bethenfalvey. I have to think the education minister. I have to think all of them agree until they say otherwise. Now, in reality, I doubt all of those members of provincial parliament agree. Some of them are very smart, well-educated themselves. They did not come from money or inherit their father's business. They have worked hard and put themselves through the system just like so many others have, and they do not want to end what we've been doing now. They do not want to now say to students, sorry, everybody else before you was fine to rip off the taxpayers, but you are not going to rip off the taxpayers. I think they agree with me that OSAP desperately needs reform. It's needed it for a while, and yet Doug Ford for 7-8 years now has pumped billions into a system that he is now openly saying was broken. Rather than fix the system, he's just going to slash it. He's going to do it because he knows kids don't vote. That's exactly what it is. He knows kids don't vote. He's hoping to appeal to angry boomers. And their taxes aren't going to go down either. By the way, just because he's doing this doesn't mean your taxes are going to go down. He's just going to spend that money on other things like cost overruns on his subway project or trying to do another feasibility study. Find another engineer who will tell him the tunnel under the 401 is a smart idea or that the Highway 413 is needed right now. It's crazy. You know, he talks about accountability. He's not accountable. Where's that money going that he's taking out of OSAP? What's he spending it on? Will that be in the budget? I'd like to know what got prioritized over education. And those other members of provincial parliament, I don't think they agree with the premier. I think that they're probably mortified that all this is going on. And while it's going on, Doug is still constantly taking shots at students, targeting students where we have 22% teenage unemployment in Ontario. 22% unemployment amongst teens in Ontario. 17% unemployment for young adults. You know, in a lot of cases, they can't even get a job to pay off their education. And now Doug Ford decides this is the time to cut their OSAP rather than just fix OSAP. It's crazy. When you go to school in the States, there are some common sense rules, by the way. If you are a Canadian being educated in the United States, it's very simple. Two main rules. Number one, you are not allowed to work while you are down there. You can work on campus. If there's a campus cafeteria or Starbucks or you want to be a teacher's assistant or something, you can do that. You can earn a little bit of money, but you are not allowed to go out into the community and take a job that could be an American's job. That's a common sense rule. I think that's very, very smart. You're there to get an education, not to try and immigrate or get a job. We never put in that rule here. That's part of the reason that the foreign students became such an issue and Mark Carney kicked them all out because they were taking up jobs. We could have just had a policy in place that if you're a foreign student, and that was how the colleges and universities got a ton of the funding they used to have, by the way, is through foreign students. Well, since that tap has been turned off, now the cost is going up for everybody else. And Doug Ford is making it a lot worse. It's pretty simple. If you're a foreign student and you want to get educated in Canada, just like they do in the States, you should not be able to take a job off campus. There's no job. You're here for an education. That's it. The other rule that the Americans have that we should implement here, you're a foreign student, you got to leave when your education is done. You've got 2 months. From the day you graduate, you've got 2 months to get out of the country. Why didn't we have common sense rules like that? How come we had to let the system be so broken for so long that we had to go from one extreme to the other? Why don't we just fix our policies? Or do our lawmakers truly not understand how the system works? The ones that they created. Last thing I'm going to play on this episode. Yesterday, Calgary Member of Parliament Michelle Rempel-Garner was in the House of Commons. She was talking immigration. This is something that came up a little bit earlier on the pod. Listen to Michelle yesterday.
Under the Liberal government, we've seen a dramatic drop in public support for immigration in Canada. Before the Liberal government, Canada's immigration system welcomed people who came to Canada to work hard and to contribute. It protected the world's most vulnerable people. But the Liberals' decision to bring too many people into Canada too fast changed all of that. Canada did not have enough housing, healthcare capacity, or jobs to keep pace with the Liberals' mass immigration policies, but brought millions of people into Canada in a few short years anyway. And Canada's crumbling immigration consensus can be attributed to another Liberal failure too. To keep the system fair for everyone, we must end two-tiered Liberal policies that reward non-citizens with no legal reason to be in Canada at the expense of Canadian citizens and legitimate refugees. For example, the law is clear. Canada must deport non-citizens convicted of serious crimes. But the Liberals have allowed judges to sidestep the intent of that law, handing down lighter sentences precisely to help non-citizens avoid deportation. This makes our streets less safe for everyone. And failed asylum claimants, people who made refugee claims but had their claims invalidated through Canadian due process, are given access to better health care than Canadians. All anyone has to do is go to one of our ERs to see firsthand that our healthcare system is crumbling. More than 100,000 Canadians have died waiting for healthcare since 2018, which directly corresponds to the explosion of the cost of the interim federal health program. My colleague Dan Mazier will join me in a moment here. He's done an amazing job at the Health Committee uncovering a lot of the information that I'm about to speak about. To restore order and fairness, the government must end both of these practices. That's why today Conservatives are delivering constructive policy options to call upon the government to ensure that when foreign nationals are convicted of serious crimes in Canada, policies and practices must ensure that they leave, and restrict federal benefits received by rejected asylum claimants to emergency life-saving health care only. These are common sense measures that are needed to restore order and fairness to Canada's immigration and healthcare systems and to keep Canada working for everyone.
Isn't that common sense? Doesn't everybody agree? That's just common sense? Is there some sort of a compassionate argument that I'm missing, or can we agree that's common sense? That's going to be a proposal from the Conservatives for new legislation. Will it get passed? I don't think so. Unfortunately, we're too divided. It's too polarized. These people that say they want to work across party lines, they don't. It's only a good idea if a liberal thinks of it. That's just the way these people are. It's nuts. Friends, have yourselves a great day. I appreciate your time. I will be back tomorrow with another brand new episode of Scott Fox After 9. Tomorrow, I'll probably do a little bit of the State of the Union. I'm kind of curious to see how Trump spins what's happening in America these days. I want to hear how they frame it, and we'll see how that goes, plus anything else that comes out of it that might be interesting. And I'm also waiting for an update on the aliens, too. You'll probably recall late last week, Donald Trump said the U.S. is going to declassify files related to UAPs and related to UFOs. It's time, he said, for the American people to know as much as the government knows. Yesterday, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, was asked about that.
Of course. I mean, we've got our people working on it right now. I don't want to oversell how much time it will take, right? We're digging in. We're going to be in full compliance with that executive order, eager to provide that for the president. So there'll be more coming on that as far as the process of what we'll do.
And what sort of time frame? Do you have any sense for how long this is going to take?
I don't have a time frame for you yet, but stand by. We'll get it for you.
And do you give us the latest on what's happening?
What?
Do you think aliens exist?
We'll see. I get to do the review and find out along with you.
Do you really think he doesn't know? He must know. They all know. It seems like they're playing a game. Just tell us, yes, aliens exist. We'll get you the evidence as soon as we can get through it all and declassify it. That's a topic for another day. Friends, I'll catch you right back here in less than 24 hours. In the meantime, I will leave you with the sounds of Pat James and The Whole Truth. Hey now.